Howdy, folks. It is Monday, June 27th, 2011. I'm Skip Ruddertail, your otter editor. With me, as always, is...
Toons is the rail riding cat, and I mean the trains.
And this is episode 11B of the Bad Dog Book Club. And we're discussing...
a story by NotTube, a non-biodegradable fox, which I believe is one of a series of many. I like also an organic shrew, a locally traded vole, organically farmed mice.
Yep. You're on a rodent kick now.
Clearly,
yeah.
I don't know. The title stuck out to me. Is what I'm saying.
Yes. NotTube, aka Ryan Campbell, and who I'm sure bears absolutely no relation to Tube on FA. Of course not. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Yeah, exactly.
What?
Who? What? We don't know. So thank you, NotTube, for sending us your story. We encourage all you writers to send us your stories as well, and hopefully we'll feature them on the book club. So again, a thanks and a little shout out. Yeah, send us your stuff and thank you, NotTube.
Alex Vance actually kind of like jumped in and said, "Hey, you guys are going to do this."
Yeah, he was like, I'm gonna read this bitch.
Yeah, he seemed really excited about the story, and I can see why, because I really enjoyed this story. Yeah. It was more or less just like an entire meditation on death, and I can totally get into that. Well, especially coming back from the Bright Eyes concert.
Yeah. So we also wanted to say it's AC this weekend. Obviously, we're not there.
No.
Hopefully next year.
Because we're broke, lonely nerds.
Right. Hey, I'm not lonely.
We're all lonely.
Wow. You're still being emo again.
This is just how my life goes. I'm sorry.
Approaching 100% of us are broke and 50% of us are lonely. So there you go. But anyway, our best wishes to everybody at AC, and I hope you all are had a great time this weekend. Mm-hmm. So just a little shout out there.
Good times.
Yep.
Sorry about Pittsburgh.
Yeah, we'll be there
from a native Pennsylvanian.
We'll be there next year.
Yeah,
oh, you're apologizing for
Pittsburgh? I mean, I live in D.C. now, but I'm from Pennsylvania, so I just feel like I'm sorry for Pittsburgh.
I hear Pittsburgh's a pretty happening place nowadays.
Who told you that?
I don't know. I mean, they've been redoing the riverfront and stuff. I hear it's
There's some very wonderful sports teams. Have you seen the sports teams there?
No.
Yeah, you should go see the sports teams.
Yeah, Steelers.
Cool. Yeah. Definitely go to Pittsburgh for the sports teams.
Yeah.
And then leave.
Aw.
Once the sports teams are away.
Don't get a job for the Chamber of Commerce.
No.
Yeah. By the way, that always impresses me, the amount of money that Anthrocon contributes to the Pittsburgh economy.
Oh yeah, because working in the tourism economy is so much fun, let me tell you.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the one I read the other day was $5.3 million direct contribution to the Pittsburgh economy from furry spending money. So there you go.
But
it's good stuff.
This is good stuff if you completely
We're
ignore...
big time now, guys. We're big time.
Oh my goodness, no. But you're completely ignoring any kind of legitimate criticism of building up tourism economies and what they do. So yeah, sure, it's great. We can say, we're going to walk in...
It's just a fur con, dude.
Oh my goodness, but I work in the tourism industry. This is like relevant to me. People from conventions come to our restaurant and they, influence the supply and demand of labor. That's just a fact of life.
Yeah.
And then you can't just go and say this is, in the raw sense, a positive thing. Maybe we're going to give them $3.5 million, but to who in the economy? To the rich elite who control the hotel and restaurant interests, or to the actual workers down there? I mean, sure, it's great fun to go down to Pittsburgh and have a good time of vacation, but it always rubs me wrong way that the sanctimony that comes out of phrase, we're going down there and we're contributing to the economy. It reminds me of a story I saw on History Channel when I was, bearing to spend time with my dad by silently watching TV with him. And they were talking about George Bush's Secret Service motorcade, and they say, you know what, when we come through and we go out, we have a nice meal, we put money into their economy, and it's good for them. This is the way they really feel. They really feel that their presence going through life, like, brightens people's days and materially improves their lives. And come on, get over it.
That's why I don't...
Enjoy your vacation. Just enjoy your dumb vacation.
That's why I don't, try to make casual conversation with Toonses normally. I mean, that's all I was doing here, but, We've been at it. That's good. That's good.
Oh well. I get
you let
it
it off. Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah. So you like the story?
I hate Pittsburgh and I hate tourists.
Okay.
What can I say? I like the story a lot.
Oh, well, that's good. At least you like something here. So. 1 out of 3.
Whatever.
Yeah. So I guess that is why we're here. It's a story. So I'll stop digressing, apparently, because it fills you with rage. So, yeah. So, like I said, Tube sent this in, and I said this is great. And, Alex had read it as well. By the way, yes, thanks to Sofa Wolf and their new Fables series, where this first appeared. And, we had a little shout out to them, too. At sofawolf.com, and thank you. But yeah, Alex said, oh, it's great. I said, it's great. And he said, no, I've got somebody I can give it to. And he's like, no, I gotta read this, because he loved it. And I think he did a great job. When you got to Weasel, though, Alex, wow, that was amazing reading, because you were totally freaking the shit out, and it was perfect. So yeah, very, very good reading, as always. Alex keeps setting the bar high for any readers, but don't be intimidated. If you want to read, drop us a line.
Please do.
Yeah. So what did you like about the story?
What I found most interesting about the story was that of the ones we've used so far, it is probably the least furry. Mm-hmm. And I say that because it actually starts out with the description of a person,
right?
Like waking up, and when it got to the description of shaving, I was thinking, wait a minute, furry guy shaving. Like, oh wait, no, it's a person. And actually, the furry characters.
That's how you know you've been a furry too long, by the way.
Well,
you don't shave your muzzle, right? It's people.
What? Yeah, but but the only furry characters in the story really exist only in the guy's head.
Right, so and they're even debatably furry, which is, something, I'm glad you brought that up, because it is something I wanted to talk about, is that we don't have any furries in this story in a traditional sense of anthropomorphic animal people.
Yes. And that's exactly what I like about it. Because when it highlights what I like about furries, when people always say, like, what is furry and what does it really constitute, I always say it's just a collection of animal imagery things that people put together to express a certain ideas about sexuality or whatever they want to really express. And I think that's condensed to its rawest form in this story, because the characters, they're not just, feral animals. I mean, they're dead feral animals. They don't have the slightest hint of any kind of anthropomorphic personality other than what's going on inside this dude's head and the thoughts he ascribes to them, which he, even in the story, is explicit in saying, foxes don't think like this. Right. He doesn't think like this. He's dead. It's just what's in my head. I'm crazy. And it really highlights when you can really get a point across in regards to using the inherent imagery and the symbolism in animals, and animism, or whatever you want to call it, once you've kind of stripped away all that human characteristics from it.
Yeah. Well, and I like that. I like the way you defined furry there, because it's a very inclusive definition rather than exclusive one. And I'm in most things in anthropology and social science stuff, I'm all about inclusive definitions that accomplish a wider variety. And so I like that. It leaves opening, it leaves flexibility, to writers and artists as to what furry is, without defining it as this narrow set of rules that you have to adhere to, because that's the way, I think, to stagnation in art forms.
Most definitely.
And, we were actually talking about earlier, you were saying, American art is great because, there weren't these people earlier to leave all these rules as to how it had to be. And so I think that can be said about a lot of things. It can be said about furry writing, is you want to be careful of the rules, that this is the way furry has to be.
Then what would also help the promotion of furry art would be if the CIA saw it as a way to promote Western values against Eastern communism. If we could get that cinched up, we could definitely be on the front pages. Just like, the modernists. Not the modernists, the expressionists like Jackson Pollock. Uh-huh. You didn't read that story?
Yeah, we're just off on another tear again, aren't we? Somehow we got Communism and the CIA. Just let it go, dude. Communism's over, man.
Okay, I'll concentrate on death some more.
Okay.
Let's get back to the story.
No, I thought that was interesting. It also reminded me, I mean, it was another one of these stories, and I think one of the reasons I love it is I could see it, brutally acted out by a great character actor in, like, a Twilight Zone-ish episode again, too, sitting there and, filmed in glorious black and white, and sitting there, going through the routine and doing the surgery when the fox head tips over and watching back. I mean, I think it would be great. You could do an interesting filming of this too. Mm-hmm. It was very visual, a very visual piece, I thought.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because it's so within his head, and it's interesting that Not-Tube was able to accomplish, a story that is basically exclusively within the guy's head, and yet make it such a visual, clearly,
Well, it's the incredibly vibrant imagery that he uses.
Yes.
Especially,
yes.
I was especially fond of the imagery he used to describe degradation. Mm-hmm. Like I think the scene when he was saying that the fox would never rot away, that
yes.
that the beetles would never crawl over it because of the scent or whatever like that. That it would just flake away into the wind like material or something like that.
Yeah.
It was a very, I think, vivid way of cementing the themes that had been coming across of preservation versus death and finality and things like that. When you have in a story the ability to really produce these illustrative images, mm-hmm. you're gonna hook people easily, and they're gonna remember it too. Right.
So maybe to backtrack almost a little bit, a double question here for us. What is the story about, and why are the taxidermied animals talking to this guy? Like, why is this happening to him?
The main conflict in the story seems to be this guy trying to cope with primarily his age and his mortality, and the death of his wife.
Right. And I agree with
and also I would also argue that there might be a legitimate medical issue here where he might be slipping into dementia. But that would be in and of itself its own struggle, independent of, oh dear, mm-hmm. death is coming, and that's just like, it'd be like how hard, he's living alone out in the woods apparently. Mm-hmm. How hard is life going to become? This is kind of why I expected him to die out in the woods. It would have seemed to me a fitting ending at the time.
Well, there's clearly indicators of heart trouble here, mm-hmm. and his left arm going numb, and those classic heart attack signs a couple different times, and then he pulls back from it, and then, as you said again, there's this kind of climactic scene out in the woods when he's by the mockingbird and he's about to set the fox down, and the bells come. And we can get to the bells in a second, what they are. But then, appears to have another one of these, heart episodes in Dick Cheney parlance.
Right. Although his heart doesn't beat anymore.
Right, that's true.
And here's the thing. Here's the fact about Dick Cheney. He is not sure if he wants to get a real heart again.
Yeah. Well, it's worked so well for him,
He's not sure if he wants the pulse back.
Right.
This is real life. It's that surreal. Well, but I'm sorry I interrupted.
Well, no, that's interesting, though, because he doesn't have a pulse, right? So if you took Dick Cheney's pulse, because it's like an impeller, so it's a continuous flow.
Yeah.
So if you took his pulse, you wouldn't feel anything.
There'd be no heartbeat.
Because there's no heartbeat. I think that'd be interesting. It's interesting. Like, what if you're, this is a total shock, but, right, how, if you're doing CPR, somebody's injured, and you take their pulse, if they have one of these things, would you just assume they were dead?
He has to wear a bracelet that says, my heart doesn't beat.
Okay. Only Dick Cheney would have to wear one.
He literally does.
Yeah.
This is true real life.
Only Dick Cheney. I think there's a good story idea there somewhere. But anyway.
Why does it have to be a story? It's real life.
Oh, no. I'm thinking, we could do something with that. But anyway, so, he has another one of these heart incidents episodes, what have you, in the woods. And, right, we both, I think, thought, well, this is it. Right. Like, this guy's going to die in a second. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't. The bells fade away.
Mm-hmm.
And big difference is then what happens?
So he goes home.
Well, the animals no longer talk to him.
Oh, yeah.
His wife says goodbye, but the animals no longer talk to him. And even he looks up at Mockingbird, who's been in this tree preserved for several years now, and he doesn't see it as a bird anymore, just a kind of weathered clump of feathers. So his visual perception of the world has changed too.
Interesting.
And that he sees that she, Mockingbird, is, weathered and eroded over the years since he put her up in that tree, which he didn't notice before. Yeah. And now she's just a clump of feathers up there, an odd clump of feathers up there, and not Mockingbird anymore.
It's a nice ending, and it kind of gives the guy a sense of resolution. And when you kind of expect the story to end like that, and then it ends in such a different note, I end up trying to compare the two, and I kind of feel as if it may have been a little bit anticlimactic. That's it. It's the only thing I was unsure about in the story, because I feel that by the end, when he wakes up the next morning, he sleeps in, which, as he had expressed earlier in the story, was kind of a representation of the beginning of the end. It seemed as if it gets across the same idea as if he died out in the woods. It's just, much less evocative imagery.
Except
if
we are still to buy his earlier presumption that, the day he sleeps in is the beginning of the end, and I'm not sure we should even by the end of the story, or if that's his fears, but not reality. If we are to even, still accept that this is the beginning of the end, he's conscious of the fact and yet still choosing to sleep in. So it's something that he is death then is something that he is accepting of and embracing of rather than fighting.
Right.
And I think, maybe you could say that if he had died right there in the clearing, it wouldn't have been his choice. He wouldn't have been accepting of it. It would have just happened. And I think that's an interesting statement to make, because we can't, it's death, we can't often choose that. Most of the time we don't, choose that. It just comes for you. But, so that's one lesson they could have left the story with. But I think the lesson that NotTube chose to leave us with is that here's a guy who has made his peace and is accepting of what has happened and what will happen to him, and is choosing that path irregardless. Right.
And you have that scene on the walk back where the forest has become completely barren and the crickets no longer chirp. And
what did you think about that? I'm not sure about the environmentalist aspect of the story here. And I say this as a huge environmentalist, but we get these little hints, and then the fox probably got poisoned from the water, from the chemical plant or whatever upstream, and then maybe his wife got cancer, but probably did, and he may be suffering effects from it, as you pointed out.
Right.
And then he goes through the forest, and everything is dead, and the trees are dying, and from the polluted water, and I don't know. I'm not sure this kind of environmentalist part of the story is necessary to me. It feels a little tacked on to me.
I don't know. It doesn't really... I'd say it doesn't predominate is what it is. So it's kind of subtle, and it influences maybe how you perceive the story. But I really just thought of it as being much more in line with the imagery of death and degradation and decay, of the environment becoming polluted and rotten and unusable. Which, if you want to just think of that as land becoming fallow, that happened before the Industrial Revolution, just because people would overplant the fields and they'd go dry, and people go, well, the land's dead, we're gonna die. Have you ever read Willa Cather's "Oh Pioneers" and their struggle with the land, and there's a real connection and idea between how you live with the land.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt it wasn't so much an explicit political environmental message. It's just an extension of the really vivid imagery. I don't know. And
so maybe I'm reading too much into it.
Well,
there.
when you
are you suggesting the dead forest is working more on a metaphorical, symbolic level for death in general?
Yeah, I don't think he's trying to be too political here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not. I mean, he could have been Upton Sinclair on this and gone off on a 3-minute speech about how only the Socialist Party can save us from the horrible pollution of the pure white landscape or whatever.
Will Cather always drove me crazy because they're out in Colorado talking about all the birch trees, and it's like they're not birch trees, they're aspens. Anyway. Sorry, you prompted that right there. I was like, they're not birches. So I had a flashback. So
I guess that's
my frustration.
So I guess you're just not as angry a ranter as I am.
Yeah. If I was you, I would have interrupted right away and been like, Bert, don't even get me. Jesus. Birches. Fuck. Hate birches.
No, if you hate birches, you should let it out. You should go fight Robert Frost.
No, birches are alright. Dude, guy can, walk 2 paths, kick my ass. Anyway,
be more aggressive, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, so, interesting, because I don't know, I mean, I did read this environmentalist image, and I did feel it's kind of tacked on, but I maybe the question is then, so if it is, I think your reading makes more sense. The forest as a metaphor, but maybe there's too much detail in there for me. The fact that it's mentioned that there's this chemical plant and stuff leads me to wonder that it's an environmental thing rather than an unexplained. But
I would say is
here's the other part of that: the fox represents all foxes, or all weasels, all birds,
right?
And that seems to lead to me as one of these Silent Spring deals, Rachel Carson, that I think there are little hints in the story that there aren't any more foxes anymore. He says it's important because you are all foxes and there aren't more. And this is this little microcosm is symptomatic or symbolic of everywhere. Not just for his feelings, but for this environmental aspect. I don't know. Not too. You'll have to tell me about it when we chat online. So.
I'd read that all foxes thing a couple different ways. For one, I liked it because it actually almost explicitly stated my idea with naming conventions and why I tend not to give a lot of my characters names, especially in porn stories, because I don't want them to represent something specific or something that would feel particular. Something seems more general.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you could have read this as 2 ways. Either
That's why they're all bitch and slut and
yeah, I mean, why not? Pet names.
Yeah.
Cute things.
Yep.
But, okay, so you can read this creation of the fox representing all foxes as 2 things. You can either reinforce the environmental message, which I'd be cool with. I mean, why not read it as an environmental message?
Oh, yeah.
That'd be cool. And say that it's representing the extinction of these planets, or at least their removal from the immediate surrounding by the pollution of the lake. But the reading I'd actually keyed in on when I was reading was the idea that when you die, all these separate concepts that you appreciate will be gone. So it's not just that when you die, this fox is gone, all foxes are gone, no more foxes,
right?
No more mockingjays, no more bears. And it says that actually. It says something like no more shaving kits, no more something. It just gives a list of some everyday items, no more those, or all those, or something like that. It reinforces this idea that it's not this fox as the specific thing that it was, that he projects a personality onto in its particular life, but foxes as an entity.
Yeah, and I think that does, speaking of personality, does go back a little bit to, what we've talked about before and other things, is that we clearly have mental images for how we see these animals. What do bears, what do we think of when we think of bears? What do we think of when we think of foxes, and so clearly this fox, fits into this, a little bit of a trickster persona or mischievous, cheeky persona. Right. And bear is kind of slow and not smart, and I mean,
very friendly.
Right, but very friendly, and so But that makes sense if this is all this guy's head filling in half of his, the other half of his conversations. You know, these are perhaps aspects of his personality. You know, as typified by these avatars.
It makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So the foxes, and he leaves the fox for last because it's the one that. If in that reading he leaves the fox for last because it's a part of his personality that he is most scared to face and deal with, because I think that it's the most truthful. You know, I mean, the fox repeatedly tells him, "You're talking to a stuffed fox. You're crazy." You know, and tells him all these things that he doesn't want to hear. Tells him things that literally make him so angry, you know, he shakes.
Right.
Or almost has a heart attack and dies.
Right.
And that's why Fox was last. Because that part of his, you know, mind was going to be challenging him and questioning him and saying, why are you doing this? Why does it make sense to you?
And his wife made the same criticisms. She didn't like the taxidermy thing either.
Right. Which I can relate to. I mean, well, you go to the Smithsonian all the time, too. So I was in natural history, actually with Sean and Andrew from Rabbit Valley about a month ago. You know, and we wander over the west side where they've got all the stuffed animals, and I don't know, I never like it much over there. You know, it's weird. It's kind of weird and creepy to me. You know, and most of those animals are in the National Zoo, too. You know, most of those you could go over. Yeah, they do. But most of those you could go over, you know, a short hop in the metro and actually see the animals live.
Then they'd be scary.
But well, I think it is a little bit of an earlier era kind of thing. And I don't know. I mean, it's a weird thing. Like, I wonder what's going to happen to these taxidermied animals at museums, because I feel like I can't be the only one who, especially when the animal is at the local zoo, and you wonder, like, why is this even here anymore? You know, what am I learning from this? What am I getting from this?
Aren't they bored
I can understand it when it's for extinct animals, and that's definitely cool. You know, so like the dinosaur parts, or even like extinct mammals, like they had a stuffed thylacine, that'd be awesome. I don't think they do, though. I mean, I think for the most part they're all actual animals that are, you know, 5 miles away at the zoo. So yeah, I understand that weirdness about, like, what is the purpose of this, especially in this era, you know. And I guess his reading is, well, the animals are no longer alive anyway; they're no longer outside, and that's his rationale. But
his rationale was that he was giving a germ of life back to them by making them mimic life. And it's actually presented in the story in a way that I think it's supposed to seem kind of flimsy, as if he's only kind of telling this to himself. The fox kind of sees through it immediately, and like we say, the fox representing a piece of his psyche of himself. But isn't taxidermy like kind of like that educational use of it born of the same era that had like human zoos and nonsense like that?
Oh yeah, I mean, this is probably, I mean, people have been taxidermying animals for hundreds and hundreds of years, but I think most of the animals that we see in the great museums in the U.S., for instance, come from the late 1800s, early 1900s. A lot of the animals, say, at the Smithsonian were shot by, you know, President Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, on his expedition. Seriously. You know, were shot by President Roosevelt. Many of the animals in the National Zoo, you know, and his stated goal was to, you know, that these would allow people to see how these animals looked and, you know, visualize them and see them in person. Partially in his mind, I mean, he loved hunting, and I will say that, but part of his rationale was that people will see these animals, how majestic they are, and want to do things to protect them.
Did that work? Did that work?
Well, he did.
Let's just, okay,
I mean, he
after the
did
fact,
create.
let's just say, did that work?
He did create the national park system, for instance. You know, we were the first country to do national parks. He created that.
That's true.
So I think, you know, to a large degree, I could say that maybe it did.
Oh, cool.
But it may be an idea that's time is, you know, has passed.
I can YouTube a lion.
Yeah.
I'm gonna YouTube a lion right now.
Well, or like I said, you can actually go down to the National Zoo and see it. But it may be an idea that's time has passed. And maybe even zoos, for that matter. Because I think there, you know, there are definitely people that aren't wild about the ideas of zoos. And I think there are definitely animals that probably don't belong in zoos.
Nerds.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever. It's a zoo.
Oh, see, look, we can get all upset about furries going to Anthrocon, and now you're like, whatever, it's a zoo?
Yep.
Hypocrite.
Yep.
Yeah, alright.
Yep. Precisely how it goes.
Let's see what else. Well, the writing style of the story was great. The conversations were great. The animals and the facets of his personality were, you know, very different from each other and well done.
Dialogue was wonderful.
The dialogue, like I said, I could see. I mean, this guy, I can really see him in my mind. The description was so good here, and you could film this, you could do whatever you wanted with this. It's really, this comes together nicely, and I did like the ending because I like, you know, I'm not one of these people like all stories have to have happy endings, but I do like a happy ending. I do, you know.
Was this a happy ending?
And I think so because it's not like sunshine and ponies or anything, or the animals magically come to life or anything like that. But I think it was a happy ending because it's a redemptive ending, and it's him moving past the death of his wife.
Right.
Obviously, it's not a super happy ending because, I mean, the land is still poisoned and
yeah, but who cares about that once you're dead?
Yeah, yeah.
Really?
And maybe that's part of what he's coming to grips with, too. So.
No, he says at one point that whole world's come to end. Mm-hmm. So...
That was very grim.
The scale of it doesn't even really seem all that impressed.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Okay, now you're getting all, like...
Well, it's just, I'm just getting in the mood of the story. It's I go to the Bright Eyes concert, I wasn't smiling.
Yeah.
Jeez, I'm crap.
Really? Actually, at a concert? At a concert? I bet you were smiling and singing along with the sad song.
At the Bright Eyes concert, even during like the very quiet, reflective, sad songs, drunk bitches be going, Connor, I love you! Nice. Connor! And these drunk bitches populated, I think, about 55% of the audience, with drunk bitches' boyfriends being about 25% and homos being the rest. Okay, so the drunk bitches behind us kept screaming...
That's 20%, by the way.
Poison Oak! Poison Oak! And they were screaming Poison Oak during the opening chords of Poison Oak.
That's the best, yeah.
Damn.
I always love that concert. So people who clap, who like know what song it is in the first bar, and then the people who know what song it is when they start singing. I always like that at concerts. They're like, woo! And then they you know, and then, oh, that song, woo! Yeah.
Well, during the encore, he introduced a song. This is a song about casual sex, and everyone immediately knew, and everybody started cheering.
Yay!
Yep. Well, everybody likes casual sex, so why not?
Yes.
We'll have to do a song about, a story about casual sex for the next one, maybe, or the one after that.
Well, we have a couple things coming down the pipeline. We're not sure the order yet, but we do have a story from Cube Triangle, which is being recorded by Sparf. We have a story from the new Days anthology published by Fur Planet, and Fuzz is going to pick one of those out and read it for us because he published it.
My good friend Drac here and I are polishing up a story.
Yep, and I think Ronnie's going to read a story from Kyle Gold at some point. So we've got some things coming down in the pipeline, and we're keeping the order a little mixed up because it keeps us more interesting for us, and partially depends on when people get recordings back to us. But we are still always looking for more. So if you have a story you want to send in, please do. You don't have to be like, oh, I've been published 15 million times or whatever. No. If you've got a story that you're proud of, send it in. Yep. We'll take a look at it. Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be published in some magazine or something. No, that's fine. If it's on Sofer, if it's on FA, if it isn't on anywhere yet and you just want to send it in, That is fine. Please do. And you can get us at Bad Dog Book Club, or sorry, baddogbooks.com/book club.
Yeah, and you can email me at toonses@drivingcat.org.
Yep, and Skip at baddogbooks.com. So, I think that about wraps up today. Do you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think I've interrupted you enough.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, we always interrupt each other. See, I don't want you to take this all upon yourself that you're the interrupter just because you're incredibly rude all the time.
Yeah, but I'm the one that does say we should be aggressive. And I wanted to point out we usually go out to lunch or something before we have our little podcast meetings or whatever. We were wearing t-shirts today. His was light blue. It says "Prepare for Otter Annihilation," and mine was like a kind of light pink, and it says "Unicorn Power." And I thought, are we on separate teams?
We were the butchest couple around, I gotta say. Because with our powder blue and pink shirts with otters and unicorns on them, we were badass motherfuckers.
I just want to know what we were competing in, because we were definitely on different teams. That's what I figured.
No, I'm a pitcher and you're a catcher.
But the unicorn has the horn.
Yeah. That's okay.
Shouldn't that represent
just because it's Sarah doesn't mean you have to use it. Right?
Bro.
Anyway. It's true, though. Alright.
It's just a symbolic thing. Jesus Christ.
Phallic
imagery.
Yeah. Hey, we're talking about stories here. If we're not going to talk about symbolic imagery,
I want to say some more things about Pittsburgh.
No, we're done with that. Let Pittsburgh alone. Pittsburgh.
What about Baltimore? I can say so many things about Baltimore.
No.
What about Amish country?
Maybe just be a little friendly for a change.
Alright.
Okay. If you don't have anything nice to say, there you go. I like your shirt, too. Alright, with that, folks, this wraps up episode 11B of the Bad Dog Book Club. I've been Skip.
This is Toonses.
And you have a good rest of the week, and we'll see you next week with a new story.
Ciao, bellows.